Welcome back to Loyalty Leaders Podcast. I'm David Feldman, chair of Loyalty Summit, and I'm joined today by Phil Rubin, who is the founder of Grace Based Matters and also our event chair of Loyalty Summit CXM. Phil and I just got back from Chicago. We had the Loyalty Summit in Chicago last week. Phil, fantastic event. We had a baseball game. We had the Frequent Traveler Awards. We had a day and a half of Loyalty Summit content, great speakers. Maybe before I ask you for your thoughts and insights and takeaways, I just sort of say that the theme, the overarching sort of theme of the event was the AI revolution, harnessing AI to drive the future of customer loyalty. That was sort of our overarching theme, sort of over a day and a half of content. It wasn't all tech talk, but certainly, that permeated, everything from sort of the technology track to talking about customer strategy and customer focus. Personalization was a big buzzword, as always, at loyalty events, not just Loyalty Summit, but across the sector. Your impressions, takeaways. Obviously, it was a great couple of days in Chicago.
It was a great couple of days. A packed house. Chicago this time of year is almost always fantastic. So it was great to see everybody. A lot of people from all over the world coming in for this. Was great. Of course, you can't spell airline without AI. But I think there was a lot. We were starting to hear a little bit more, not just about AI, but a little bit more about innovation in the industry, and I think that's hugely important. There were people starting with Luke Bondar from United Airlines talking about some of the innovation, that they're working on, which I think was really smart, and people were talking about that over the couple of days, and it was a great event. So congrats on putting that on.
Yeah, another sold out event. We've had, I think the last three Loyalty Summits have all been sold out in advance. We literally just 10 minutes before we were starting, we're bringing more chairs and tables. Because we literally were overflowing. But it was Luke Bondar from United Airlines kicked it off, and it was a great presentation by United, talking about their connective media initiative. I think answering a lot of people's questions about, well, this is great and all, but from great use of technology maybe, but how does that relate to loyalty, and where does the loyalty program fit in? And I think that was a really, really good kickoff session to the event, where we learned about, how that can make things more relevant, not just from whether we're talking about member engagement, whether we're talking about value proposition in terms of actual benefits to members from the relationships and partnerships that are opened up and made possible by that. And obviously there's a commercial benefit to the brand there as well. We then talked about, you actually moderated a session talking about whether loyalty technology, was stuck, and whether it was technology that was holding programs back, or it was perhaps program strategy that was holding innovation back. And you already sort of mentioned innovation. Did you want to sort of talk to any takeaways from that discussion that you thought were noteworthy?
Yeah, that was a really fun session to moderate, because we had some different perspectives. But one of the things that was apparent, and it came up in the conversation, was the fact that, and this is a little bit of foreshadowing just to tease LA a little bit, but if you think about where we are from a loyalty standpoint, loyalty has come, I would say, only so far since, late 1970s, early 80s, the beginning of modern loyalty with Texas Air and United and American. I should say Texas Air, American, and United. But United's top of mind. Plus I live in DC now. But if you think about where technology has come from over the last 45, 50 years and where it's gotten to, the advancements in technology are far, far ahead of where we as an industry have moved loyalty. And so the stuck point, and this loyalty unstuck, is one of the things I've been really obsessed with over the last year or so. It's not so much the technology as it is the people. Mm-hmm. It's people prioritization, it's resource allocation, and tying that back to business outcomes. To your point, there's a reason that this is done, and it's not just because it's fun. It's because it makes money when it's done well and done right. And And so I think it creates a need, almost an imperative for the industry, especially with some of the things that are going on externally today, to focus on innovation and making loyalty more integrated into the business. And I think what Luke talked about at the beginning in Chicago was spot on, in that, yeah, they're doing this because it's a publishing opportunity. I'm paraphrasing. It's a publishing opportunity, but they're doing it with an eye towards integrating it from a loyalty standpoint, because he's the champion and he's the president of United Loyalty, but also because it translates into a better experience for the passenger and delivering more relevant value to the passenger when they're effectively captive, strapped in the proverbial aluminum tube. And there hasn't been enough, at least from my perspective, on unlocking the better experience, at least not from a pervasive industry.
I think that's a really good point, and that was my takeaway from it as well, because I think, and Luke was Luke was a great sport. He was very candid, because we sort of went into the discussion with, hey, look, with this new technology that was announced earlier in the year, there was a little bit of criticism, even from the industry, both from passengers, consumers in the industry as well, about, isn't this just a little too clever by halfway of taking, literally taking advantage of captive passengers that don't have a choice, and I think he acknowledged it's a fair question. It's a fair question, but, here's, I think my takeaways from the conversation with a couple of things. Number one, look, the reality is all day, every day in life, we as consumers are being bombarded, and we have been for quite some time. And, in industry, industry advocates such as yourself, myself, others, our colleagues, we've always been saying, look, relevancy is important. Personalization might be a buzzword, but if it's relevant, you don't necessarily always feel you're being sold to. And if I'm going to be subject to messaging and content that I, have to consume, if it's relevant, I'm at least going to have a passing interest in it. Maybe I'm not going to be glued to the screen, but it's like, okay, all right, hey, that was interesting. Occasionally you learn something even, or you're like, hey, that's kind of cool, whatever. But he made another point as well, in that it opens up an opportunity to actually deliver real benefits and offers. And he used a case study of a partner that they partner with, where there was literally a meaningful benefit for passengers and consumers, to take advantage of. And sure, on the tail end, there's a potential upside, upgrade offer and things like that for consumers and for the commercial brand partner as well. But even without that, no extra charge to the passengers or the members. There were literally added value benefits made available. And I think, like you say, integrating it with an eye and a viewpoint from the loyalty program's perspective and the loyalty member value prop, it's, I don't know, game changer is a strong word, but it's certainly smart strategy in terms of implementing it. And I think that, at least so far, they're doing a good job. If they continue, it's going to be an industry case study.
Yeah, and what I appreciated was, and it was easy for him to do this because they weren't there, but he talked a little smack relative to Delta. And given my experience with Delta, which goes back a number of years, and also living in Atlanta for 30 years before moving to DC, it was good to hear a little smack talk from Luke challenging Delta, because they're probably the two best positioned US-based carriers at this point. And Delta,
American wanted to be there, but they were facing 15-minute rolling delays, so they couldn't make it. I can say that.
Well, and going back to what you were saying about personalization, I think, we've been talking about personalization for so long, right? The Don and Martha's One-to-One Future book is, I don't know, 25 years old at this point, I think, at least. It might be more. It might even be older than that. I always like to think about the differences in those two. People get personalization wrong because they think personalization might just be using somebody's name or something like that. Personalization by itself doesn't mean it's relevant. The relevance to a customer is, by all definitions, personal. If they find it relevant, it's personal to them. And there's not enough of that. And that's a big stuck point, I think, for loyalty today.
Mm-hmm.
sadly.
So I think that leads me to my next question to you, just before we sort of move off from technology. One of the things that came through in the discussion, and I think I articulated this at the event, but we've gone through a period of time. I know you and I have talked about in various forums about this as well over the years. We've certainly gone through a number of years of plenty of technology solutions looking for problems, and fads and novelties and what have you. One of the questions I think that was posed at the event was, is AI suddenly, is AI actually the thing that actually does have true practical application, does have true problem solving in terms of delivering commercial results, operational efficiencies, additional capabilities, to loyalty programs that, actually can solve real commercial and business problems where, some of those other sort of tech buzzwords and fads that came before, again, were sort of solutions looking for problems. Did AI has AI hit the mark? And sort of question number one. Question number two that I think came through from the event was there was a question about, well, is it truly revolutionary or is AI just sort of evolutionary? Because we've been dealing with, big data, machine learning, things like that for quite some time. And is generative AI just sort of the next iteration of that? I'm interested to sort of hear your takeaways of where you landed on that.
Yeah, I think been in a number of events where there's been a focus on AI, and in my view, it holds an incredible amount of promise because it can get some of these stuck points undone. And I think it's not just generative, it's predictive. Mm-hmm. Which is sort of the what we've been doing for 25 years with predictive analytics, modeling, neural networks, that sort of thing. But there are also efficiencies that come with it, right? So it's how can you be both more efficient, and my dog completely agrees. How can you be both more efficient and more effective? And those are really the two dimensions. But ultimately, I think the promise and the potential for AI from a loyalty standpoint is to actually make experiences more beneficial and more relevant from a human standpoint. And if
that makes AI a lot of sense to me,
can humanize customer experiences better than it's done today, then it has huge potential for victory. And I think some of that has to do with how do you leverage data to borrow this Nike phrase that I love, know to serve. How can brands know to serve customers better? Mm-hmm. Because that is the experience that translates into loyalty.
Yep, that makes a lot of sense. Pivoting to another question, to another topic, is another area of the focus we had, particularly in day 2 of the event, was sort of the age of customer focused loyalty. There were 2 sort of themes there that of refocusing on the customer and from a program strategy point of view, and also back to basics was another sort of theme there as well. In terms of programs have become potentially large, complex, convoluted, perhaps overloaded to the point that we see constant devaluations, things like that. But the importance of bringing it back to basics, in the simplest example being a compelling value proposition that gives members or customers a reason to sign up and enroll in the program in the first place, engage with the program, and then hopefully, maintain their engagement, re-engage, and in a typical points program, that would mean being motivated to earn, being motivated to redeem, having a good redemption experience, and being motivated to re-earn again, and continuing that cycle. So sort of that back to basics theme and the age of customer loyalty theme. Did you have any sort of takeaways or insights that you picked up on those?
Yeah, and I'll add to what you just said, and that I think part of the challenge, part of the stuck point out there in the marketplace is. And this is where I have a little bit different opinion relative to those basics, because I think those basics are fundamental, right? And now like just today, there's this new Durban thing that's been proposed about transparency in programs, which is going to put a lot of pressure, whether it happens or not. The effect will ultimately be, the question is it just a speed bump, or is it going to be more of an impediment for companies out there? But the other back to basic that is really missing is what we call database marketing, but the customer experience. And it's how do you leverage all the data that is the yield, that is the value, that is one of the big levers for loyalty to level up in a corporate strategy set of strategic priorities, is using the data and being able to collect zero and first party data. But the basics should also include how does that data get used in the enterprise? And that's where the technology exists. But some of this, and to bring it back to AI, where AI can help automate things and make them more efficient, it should free up humans to think about, okay, how can we use data in different, better ways to better serve customers? Because if it's one thing to get people doing the basic mechanics of engaging, enrolling, engaging, sharing data, earning and redeeming, all those sort of transactional components. But if it doesn't extend into the experiential components, I think that's where it falls short of the real definition of loyalty, because it's a state, it's an emotion. It's not just, and it's not just originated from transactional value. Not to say
I think that's
going to go away, but I think that's that gets into not just prioritization and resources, but silos and having loyalty sort of relegated underneath marketing versus being more tied into operations, into finance, into product itself.
No, that's a good takeaway as well. Absolutely, we've had variations of that conversation for quite some time. I think about where should loyalty sit, and the answer is not necessarily black and white. It can be different for every single organization and brand. But I agree with you. I think those are some of the takeaways as well. There was certainly some interesting discussions on that. Nobody has the solution, but I think that I think that. If you're a loyalty program manager, and you were, wanting to sort of take away from the event some ideas or some perhaps approaches or strategies to how to address some of these issues, I think those were some of the good takeaways, and insights there, or at the very least, food for thought as you're developing your program strategy, as you're working with your other, I hate the buzzword, but the stakeholders in the organization. The reality is you do have to navigate some of those challenges. Pivoting. Your other hat that you wear, and that was a great wrap up of Chicago, and obviously, there's a lot more than what we can fit into a short discussion here today. But pivoting to the next upcoming event, which you are the event chair of, is Loyalty Summit CXM coming up in Los Angeles on the 5th and 6th of February, 2025. Now we can easily say next year, but the reality is that's only a few months away. It's going to come around very, very quickly. Can you tell us a little bit about sort of the plans for Los Angeles, but also for those that are a little bit confused, the difference between Loyalty Summit, which we just had in Chicago, and Loyalty Summit CXM?
Yeah, I'm super excited about doing this again. And it is coming fast and furious, and we're getting ready to announce our first tranches of speakers, not tranches. Well, tranche, fine word. Not surprisingly, well, first, what's the difference between Loyalty Summit and Loyalty Summit CXM? Loyalty Summit has traditionally been very focused on travel and related to travel payments and co-brand cards and things like that. Loyalty Summit CXM takes a much broader aperture, and there's going to be a little bit of travel, but there's going to be a whole bunch of other categories and industries represented. So it was originally conceived to be more retail focused. So we're going to have some great retailers on stage and in attendance. We're going to have automotive. We're going to have FMCG. We're going to have some CPG, a little bit of travel and hospitality, and of course, financial services. We'll have a whole track on payments and partnerships. And being in LA, naturally, we'll have some entertainment brands represented and even a little cannabis, because that is becoming a big industry. And we've got some wonderful people already committed to coming on stage. We're not going to reveal any names just yet, but we've got some CMOs, some presidents, a bunch of senior executives, marketing leaders, e-commerce leaders, and really, really excited in terms of picking up from where we left off last year in LA, where we got a lot of great feedback, especially on the content side. And if anything, the criticism was it's too heavy on the content. We're still going to be heavy on the content because we want to create something that is thought-provoking, that gives people something to take away and do and think differently. The theme is really going to reflect this notion that loyalty is a bit stuck, that there's a huge opportunity, not just because of technology, but for a lot of other reasons, that we've got to be much more focused on innovation within the industry. We've got to be much more focused about bringing the brand into the loyalty proposition and helping use loyalty to amplify the best of the brand and the best of what companies offer, to not just be creative and be something that gets talked about, but ultimately that translates into, number one, a better experience and more value for the customer, but equally important, moves the needle in terms of profitable growth for the companies and the brands behind it. So really, really excited about talking about how we modernize loyalty, how we move it forward and make it future-proof, how it gets integrated across the business, how it gets enabled with technology, obviously including AI, but we're going to talk about other technologies too, how the value and the ability to leverage data becomes much more productive, and back to the way we described AI is both driving efficiency and effectiveness. Huge opportunity. It goes back to why loyalty started in the first place, to collect data and do a more effective job at getting customers back and spending money and having better experiences and feeling good about those transactions. And like I said, payments and partners, because they're so essential as part of the value proposition and the operations, and of course, financially.
Thanks for that introduction, Phil. So, look, Loyalty Summit CXM. For more information, stay tuned to loyaltysummitcxm.com. All the event information will go up on the website. I think right now we have the dates up online, and you can certainly click to join the mailing list to get our launch email. And we're going to be populating some of the topics and the speakers online very, very, very shortly. Phil, I know you and I are going to be chatting again as we get closer to LA, in more detail about what's coming up in LA, but already exciting for those that were in LA last year. It was November last year we had it.
We had it the week before Thanksgiving, which is why it's now going to be the first week of February. That's
right. But it was a jam-packed 2 days, and I definitely remember. I don't want to say content overload, but there was no shortage of content. But people were glued to it. There's always this balance between how much sort of entertainment and networking do we have at events versus how much content. But the reality is people want it all. To some degree, the feedback we get from people is, look, even when there's a lot of content, turn the fire hose on, give it to me, and I'll absorb as much as I can. So I think that people are going to look forward to another content heavy. But there's a balance. We're trying to keep it digestible as well.
It'll be digestible, and it's important because part of what we're trying to do is attract, and what we're effectively doing, both on stage and from an attendee standpoint, is get a more senior, strategic, customer-focused executive sharing insights, challenging others, offering different opinions, but at the same time, when we're networking and socializing and eating and drinking, is relationships get formed. And the thing that I was really happy about in terms of LA last year, besides the content, is a lot of business got done. Yep. And I think we're going to be able to do the same thing next February.
Terrific. Phil, thank you so much for your time. And what a great wrap up of Chicago as well. It's always hard to sort of, distill down all the takeaways and insights, but it was a great event. It's a mixed blessing when it's sold out. Obviously we love the events are well attended and sold out, but, at the same time, when more people want to come than you can accommodate, it's always a bit of a challenge. So if you are looking to come and join us in LA, stay tuned, get in early, don't leave it to the last minute because we don't want you to miss out. And
we will definitely sell out LA, given the speakers that we've already got committed. I
think it's important to note as well, because, for those that haven't been to a Loyalty Summit event or a Loyalty Summit CXM event before, our approach to these things is, we're not trying to create, 1,000, 2,000 people events. These are small, intimate gatherings. The idea being that there's a focus on networking, there's a focus on quality, both in terms of the attendees, the speakers, the content, but it's also meant to be, a senior level, in terms of, being able to actually catch up with people and meet people and learn and network. And we try to strike the balance between, I'll use the word intimate, but, also having that critical mass of it being a worthwhile event for you to attend. So that creates the challenge of it means there is an attendee cap, and we can sell out. We do sell out. The last 3 events have certainly sold out. So if you are interested, do pay attention, but don't leave it to the last minute because we want to try to avoid disappointment.
February 5th and 6th. I'm thrilled. And I got to say, because of the momentum from all these events, mm-hmm. the people that we've reached out to join us on stage, I don't want to, hopefully I'm not jinxing it here because we got a handful of slots left. It's amazing how many people have said yes. The number of no's I could count on one hand. So I think we're about 35, 40 speakers already committed. So
that's fantastic. And looking forward to finding out who they are as in the coming weeks, Phil.
I guess in the next 10 days we'll start making announcements.
It's it's going to come around very, very quickly. Phil Rubin, thank you so much for joining me again, distilling down some of those insights from Chicago, telling us a little bit about the upcoming Loyalty Summit CXM in Los Angeles, February 5th and 6th. Stay tuned. More information, loyaltysummitcxm.com. Thank you, and I'm sure we're going to chat again soon.
Sounds good. Thanks, David. Always fun to chat.